What's up, everybody? Welcome to the N.E.R.D, Never Ending Ridiculous Discussions Film and TV podcast. I'll be your host for the first time in what feels like quite a while, Dominic Spizzeri, with my co-host Kayla Smith. How are you doing today, Kayla?
Oh, we're good. I'm in the deep throes of getting my community show up on stage, but we're hanging in there.
Oh yeah, that's good. For those of you who don't know, Kayla does a lot of community shows. You're currently doing a production of what is it?
Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, gonna be in
Yes.
DeKalb.
One of many interpretations of a very popular work, which, fun fact, we just did a deep dive into that. And there is literally how many different movies? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Seven in like just movies alone. And then one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Nine different productions in TV. So if you've never seen Sweeney Todd, clearly you have your own options, including one starring Tom Hardy, which just
Yeah.
blows my mind, and I don't get it, but whatever. Apparently, Johnny Depp isn't the only person who's ever played Sweeney Todd, so I've now learned something today. But enough about that. Welcome to the Film and TV podcast, where we just pretty much talk about whatever we've been watching, whatever's on our mind on film and TV. And this week, I'm giving a gift. I'm giving a gift to my lovely co-host. For we have a lot of side conversations, and even though I may go on and mention Godzilla in every single episode I can, by the way, that's my one per episode, there's one thing that she always wants to talk about, and something that's very hard for me to get into, and I think a lot of people have a lot of trouble getting into, and that is a lovely genre called musicals. So, this, I'm going to hand it all over to you. Kayla, please tell me, why should I care about musicals?
So before we talk about why you should care, I think it's really important to address the elephant in the room, which is why a lot of people don't care and why a lot of people get really frustrated with musicals, myself included sometimes.
Hmm.
And it is, I think, that bigger issue of continuity that we've talked about. There is a massive suspension of disbelief involved in every single musical, no matter if it's on stage or in a movie. And that is the transition from having a normal conversation like we are into singing your feelings, dancing your feelings. And for quite a lot of people, that is, for some reason, a step too far. uh, And part of the reason that we kind of started having this conversation was because it really kind of baffles me when people are so passionate about music like you and I are, and they love the storytelling aspect that music brings into our lives as well as the emotional aspect of that too. And then for some reason when it gets translated into actually telling a story, something there's a disconnect that occurs. There's something that gets lost. I think a big part of that has to do with, were you raised watching them? Were you raised to already suspend your disbelief? Kind of like we're raised on these Disney movies, we're raised on Pixar, we're raised on animation where you see a talking crab and like, why is that so crazy to have a talking crab, a crab that would not normally talk, start singing? It, you know, it for me that feels a little bit, silly when somebody points it out as clear as day to me. But I understand.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, I like how you brought up Disney because I can't now aside from maybe Frozen, and I'm assuming Frozen 2. I never actually saw Frozen 2. I really can't name any recent Disney movies beyond those two that really had those broad musical numbers aside from the I think 80s, 90s animated movies. Because even then they took those out with I think is the first one where they kind of remove them. I don't really remember, but it was around that. It was around like the Toy Story era where they were like, "All right, no more musicals. We're gonna go hard and just story." And then like Shrek kind of like was like, "Hey, this is how we're gonna do music numbers now, which is just a party. It's to just some song that everyone's just listening to."
To remember that the whole purpose of Shrek was to actively point fun at Disney.
Yeah.
The people at the helm of Shrek, which this was a side conversation, but the people at the helm of Shrek had worked at Disney, and the whole purpose of this was to kind of give them the middle finger a little bit, by making a completely out there and ridiculous love story fairy tale adventure that took all of these tropes that Disney popularized and kind of make fun of them. But I'm really glad that you brought up the Disney, what is widely known as the Disney Renaissance, which actually started with The Little Mermaid. And I am so sorry for our audience that does not care about this. I'm about to go into some history here.
Yeah, this might not be your episode if you don't like this, but go
Uh,
on. Go on. Educate us.
okay. So what happened was the Black Cauldron in the 80s. And the Black Cauldron did not do well. Disney, the animation department, was basically on the brink of collapse. All of this information is available. There's a really good documentary about Alan Menken on Disney Plus that I highly recommend watching. It is incredibly insightful and interesting. Um, and the animation department was basically shoved into a warehouse. And Disney was shutting down the animation department, which looking back now would have been absolutely insane to us. But because of these repeated bombs in the box office, uh, the animation department was tanking. So they started working on The Little Mermaid, and somebody on that team brought in the what is now famous writing duo of Alan Menken and Howard Ashman. They did Little Shop of Horrors, which a lot of people know is a cult classic for Halloween. I love Little Shop of Horrors. And when he came into the Disney department, he kind of had a conversation about how movie musicals should work, how to make them work. And a big part of that is understanding that the way you get people to suspend their disbelief in animation, you already have a talking crab who is Jamaican for some reason. It shouldn't be that far of a stretch for him to then start singing. And part of that is working in these vamps under the dialogue so that by the time that he starts talking about wanting to live under the sea and why it's so great, it's as natural as breathing. And he really thought it was important that when you're filming and creating these movie musicals, that you make it as seamless of a transition as possible and that you make it basically like how a Broadway musical would work, which is when the emotion gets too big to speak, you sing. When the emotion gets too big to sing, you dance. And a perfect example of that is Under the Sea. He's trying to get Ariel to stay under the sea. He can't get her to stay. He loves living under there so much, he starts singing. And when that gets too much, the entire chorus of Fish Under the Sea start dancing. And it feels fun. It feels natural. Part of that's the animation. Part of that is the way that they did it. Yes, Tarzan, there is an argument presented by another YouTuber. His name is Sideways. I love his channel. He's great. But he talks a lot about how Tarzan, which you pointed out, kind of brought about the end of the Disney Renaissance era because the directors and writers of Tarzan went against those tenets that Howard Ashman had put in place. He died right after Beauty and the Beast. He had finished working on Beauty and the Beast. He was dying of AIDS. They moved the entire production to New York. It's really cool. Um, and they said, well, look at how Toy Story is doing. Look at all of these Pixar movies that are being brought out to people that have no singing in it, and they're doing great. And so then you have this kind of disconnected, disembodied voice that is, oh shoot. I love this singer. Why can't I remember who he is?
Phil Collins? Isn't it Phil Collins?
Yes, Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Thank you. You have an amazing Phil Collins soundtrack, but you don't have any of your actors or characters singing themselves. So you're having all of these feelings sung at you. You're supposed to connect with him, but the feelings are being sung at you instead of by the character. Um, if you want more information on that, go watch his video on Tarzan. It's very, very interesting. But you're right. That did kind of bring about this end of the animated movie musical as Disney know it for a long time. I believe it was um Princess and the Frog first, and then Tangled, and then Frozen. And Frozen really kind of finished pushing Disney back into this movie musical idea, and we really got back to that sense of this is how the movie musical is supposed to work when you do it in this format. We are talking about a very specific kind of musical as well, which is singing, talking, singing. It's generally a love story of some sort, whether it's a love between two sisters, between a princess and a beast, or um like Hercules. It's him and Meg, but he's on a journey, he's on a hero's journey. At the end of the day, going back to kind of how our traditional musicals work, which would be if we're talking about live musicals, we're looking at like Singing in the Rain, we're looking at The King and I, which are some of my favorites, or even I was about to try to say Phantom of the Opera, but that's entirely sung through and that's a different thing. But it's really important how you do it and how you do those transitions. You compare, let's say, Frozen to Grease. I love Grease. I completely understand why that movie does not work for so many people. It is ridiculous. It's not a very good story, especially not for women. And the music's really not that great. It's catchy, but it's not that great. And every time they start singing, it's like some big, cheesy, smiley musical number. And while that warms my heart as somebody who loves theater and who loves musicals, for people who are trying to enter into that, I would never say start with Grease. Ever. Ever. If you want to get somebody into listening to something like that, I would point them back to like Disney because they do it right and it feels fun and it's easier to suspend your disbelief in those situations if that kind of makes sense.
Right. I get it. And like even like everything you're kind of mentioning is so it's also from like a time period. So you're mentioning you said three, technically four if you count Frozen and Frozen 2 of Disney films, what Tangled and then Princess and the Frog and then obviously the two Frozens. So those are like four examples of at least Disney doing it modern wise. Now I'm trying to think of like people outside because I feel like that's the majority of musical introduction for people from at least our generation probably got introduced through the old Disney films. And now that we are on the older side, we're in our 30s, we're having kids, we're introducing everyone. I got to think of like that generation like right before us, that one little middle ground that grew up without those kind of
Cars.
films. Huh?
They grew up with cars.
Yeah, like they grew up, with Life is a Highway, which is a personal hell in my opinion. And so they didn't really get that. And I got to think like what musicals came out during that period. And I picture of course Johnny Depp's Sweeney Todd, which I thought was a good movie. You have Les Mis, which I think the majority of people would say don't watch that one. It's not exactly a great adaptation. I know there was a Phantom of the Opera that came out around 2005 ish. I could swear there was a film, a big Hollywood production. And then beyond like what those three films, I know there is Moulin Rouge, which I feel like a lot of people like, and then there was was it Across the Universe, which is like a Beatles, which I don't even think would you even count that as a musical in like at least in the classical
Absolutely.
sense. You would.
As a movie musical, yes, absolutely. Does it work as a stage musical? Absolutely not. But they're two
Yeah,
different things.
but like aside from those, what is that generation? I feel like those are the people we're really talking to. I feel like, oh
Right.
yeah, and like, what do they have to work off of?
I think part of the problem is, and I really want to do an episode about, I love when we do episodes like this about things that are kind of very fandom-y, where people are very intensely attracted to musicals. There are people who are very intensely attracted to and love Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. And I really love talking about this, and I'm really happy I'm getting the opportunity to say this, which is that people like me, and not me specifically, ruin it for everybody else every single time.
Yeah, you're the gatekeeper.
Right. Right. And if there is one thing that that really frustrates me every single time, it's when you see people getting snooty about these things. I have had I still myself, like I love the like 2007 is when this came out, I think, Hairspray.
Mhm.
I love Hairspray. I loved Zac Efron in that movie. I loved Queen Latifah. I loved Christopher Walken. Amanda Bynes was like, I still can like see and I can say most of the lines in that movie. I drove my mother insane growing up watching that movie. There are people who are the, quote unquote gatekeepers
Uh-huh.
to either the musical world or these fandoms that say, "You like that? Are you kidding me? That's horrible. Why would you? Oh, there's so many problems with it." Like we get so snooty about these things. And if somebody were to come up to me and say, "I'm not really a big musical person, but I love The Little Mermaid," I would never ever put that person down. I would say, "Oh, you really like that? Well, then let's try this." Or, when we originally had this conversation, you had said that there were a couple of movies that you had liked that were musicals, and I think you had mentioned not you had mentioned Sweeney Todd, and then you had also mentioned another one I couldn't remember. Phantom of the Opera, I think is what you had said you had enjoyed a lot.
Oh yeah, for me
And
personally, yes.
right. And for me as somebody who loves these things, I was able to figure out where the disconnect was for you, which is that for you that suspension of disbelief between the speaking and the singing has to be done extremely well, or it needs to be mostly sung through. And all of a sudden I felt like I had so many other avenues to get you into with us, like come to our side. I
Yeah.
understand now what the problem is. And that's the great thing about the Stephen Sondheim's, the um Alan Menken's, even though he doesn't do this, and oh geez, Andrew Lloyd Webber's of the world, is that um they create these different genres of the musical. People think that the musical is one thing and one thing only, and that is overwrought and dramatic, and that there is a bunch of really big, shiny, dazzly tap numbers and huge singing, and that it's going to be, I don't know, like Bernadette Peters on stage being a diva the whole time. And that's just not the case. There's so many different genres, there's so many different avenues to get into these things. Sweeney Todd is a horror musical, which feels very contrary to what, Grease and Hairspray and The Little Mermaid are. But you have that. And part of the reason these musicals are so successful, and I do want to talk about Les Mis, I want to talk about that a lot. But part of the reason that his musicals are so successful is because he's not just pointing at, okay, let's make a horror musical. We're talking about the human condition. What drives this man to murder all these people? Why does he need revenge so much? What has happened to this man to get him to this place? And he creates an anti-hero, which is very antithetical to what the classical Oklahoma's music mans of the world are.
Oh, you're looking for me to respond. I might have to cut that out.
Sorry. No, it's okay. That's okay. I can keep going. Then you get to the movie musicals that a lot of people have been introduced to in recent years, like Les Mis, like Into the Woods, like Cats, which I have a lot of issues with. I have so many issues with that. The Last 5 Years and Jersey Boys. All of these musicals that I just listed, I hold near and dear to my heart. They are beautiful, beautiful pieces of art. And the people who brought them to the screen ruined them. They ruined it for us, and they especially ruined it for you as a person who does not like musicals.
what's the what's the big difference? Because I know obviously, like, from my memory of Les Mis, like I know a lot of people had a lot of problem with the live performance of it, which is definitely rough. I remember when I watched that, there were songs that I'm sure there were times where it's like, okay, the live definitely helped, but then there were other times where it's like, okay, definitely not so much. And then obviously Cats is just that's nightmare fuel, just looking at that movie. But like what do you think as somebody who obviously likes musicals, what what is the underlying issue that really ruined these things?
So I grew up watching Cats, and I would like to spend as little time on that nightmare of a of a fever dream as humanly possible. I grew up watching Cats.
Oh.
There was a production company called Really Useful Productions who recorded, at minimum, these are the ones I grew up with, Cats on stage, and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is filmed as if it is being performed as a school play for a bunch of small children. And the part of the reason that those movies work so well and they create magic for small children like me or people who love the theater is because you're getting that live performance feeling, but they did it smartly. They did it very smartly. So the live production of Cats on a stage, you're getting these really beautiful handmade costumes. I mean, they painted the leotards, Dominic. So it's not just like a bunch of ballet dancers in tights. I mean, these are beautiful, beautiful costume sets. And part of what I was looking forward to in Cats was seeing how they were planning on doing that because there was so much painstaking hand work put into each moment of this production and of these productions. You have these beautifully trained ballet dancers. I mean, this musical is not about cats. I mean, it is, but it's not it's a really Andrew Lloyd Webber's love letter to ballet and the art of dance. And that's why it works well to have it performed by dancers playing cats because cats are already so graceful and pretty even when they're scrambling to get off the bed. Um, and Joseph, again, there's so much love and time put into these things that you can see that there are people who really care about what they're doing. And on top of that, you then put Tom Hooper behind the wheel, and he was behind the wheel directing Les Mis, and then he
Mhm.
directed Cats. The timeline for this is very important. We were getting to a point, which I'm sure you're aware of because of T-Pain, uh, partially because of T-Pain, where the general public was pushing for a live performance always. I think you know where I'm going with this. And there were a lot of questions about who could sing and who not, and who couldn't. And if you can't sing, then you have no right to be singing or performing. And how can you call yourself a performer if you can't sing? So Tom Hooper decided that to bring back the magic of seeing a production live on stage, he was going to have his actors sing live on set. They didn't even do that in Singing in the Rain. One of
Mm.
it is still widely regarded as one of the top, it always hits in the top 100 best movies of all time, Singing in the Rain does. And they did not record those people live. I think there are moments where they sang live on set, but most of that was done behind a mic.
Mhm.
What they did not do in the studio back then was sap all of the emotion out of the voices of their singers. You can feel the smiles in their voices when they're singing about, when Gene Kelly is singing about being in love, you can feel the joy that they have when they're singing Good Morning at like 2 o'clock in the morning because they realize they've stayed up so late. I mean, that is what made these movies magic. It was a love for the art form of live performance. And what Tom Hooper did was he took that and he just took a steel-toed boot and smashed it. He he thought it was okay for Hugh Jackman to go without water for 3 days and then show up on set and sing live. As a musician, that should horrify you. He had no water in his body and he's trying to sing and perform what is arguably one of the hardest male roles to sing in live theater.
And I'm going to assume that's probably the scene you're referring to is probably near the beginning of that movie because I know he's kind of seems like he definitely would be thirsty at that point if I recall the story correctly.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman purposefully emaciated himself like a bodybuilder would. Like I'm assuming he probably did when he was playing Wolverine and X-Men sometimes where you go without water for a few days to get the veins in your body to pop. And he's like, "Okay, well, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to drink any water, and then I'm going to look like I've really been starved in a prison forever." Well, they could have done that in post. There are 100 other ways that they could have done that without him having to deprive himself of fluids. And as a singer myself, I truly I found that out and I was just horrified. I can't
Yeah.
imagine not drinking water for 3 days and then showing up to set and trying to sing, let alone trying to sing and carry a giant log on my back and act at the same time. And then also he had an earpiece in his ear so he could hear the pianist from like 3 miles away playing in his ear. The pianist is trying to do whatever the hell Hugh Jackman wants to do with the song. He can't, I mean, he's already not singing at his best, and now he's trying to follow a pianist in his ear. The pianist is trying to follow him. He's trying to add in, I'm about to throw out music terms, rallentandos and retardandos where there's absolutely no call for them. And of course, you get a bad performance. You have Russell Crowe who goes to like, I think he said he's had like 10 different voice coaches. It's not that Russell Crowe can't sing, it's that he wasn't trained to sing properly. And that is how you get a train wreck of a movie. The brightest lights in that movie are Eddie Redmayne, Amanda Seyfried, who is not my favorite singer, and Samantha Barks. And Samantha Barks actually played the role that she played in that movie on Broadway. Of course her performance was better. She didn't starve herself of water and she already knew how to sing. That's why those moments were magic. Because you got a really true, fully fledged performance.
Yeah. And it's crazy, like the way you're describing it now. So like, from like a musical standpoint, I know or not like musicals, but like from somebody who's into music and loves watching the production of how albums are recorded and stuff like that. Like what he did isn't entirely unheard of. Like I know one of my favorite story because like when you hear that, like, I hear the frightening of as a performer, hearing that kind of description and being like, oh my god, like why would you do that? That's a horrible idea. And like obviously this is nothing new for actors. Like I mean there is a countless list of actors who really just go nuts. Christian Bale, I think, just look at his career and every single role he's ever had, the man is insane. And Jared Leto is another example of someone who does that. But I do think it's crazy hearing that, but like because like on paper I think that sounds great, and only because like I mean, like I don't want to say like great as in like punish yourself, but like it sounds like, oh, the product you're gonna get is amazing. Because like I know, like coming from a more again, when talking to like music albums and stuff like that, like I know countless stories of vocalists who do crazy things to get a take that's utterly impossible to not get unless you're like in that state of mind.
Uh-huh.
And I can name a number of stories that I'm sure like you would be like, that's weird, like why would you do that? But like
Right.
it works because when you listen back to like the album, you're just like, yeah, even live, I've never been able to hear them hit that kind of thing. But it's kind of crazy how I think in music, if I was to tell the story of like a certain song or something like that, you would hear it like through your headphones and be like, this is amazing, but it didn't work in Les Mis. And I'm sure it probably maybe doesn't work in musicals as a film. And I think I think it's a little insane. I gotta wonder why that is. If it's I gotta imagine it's more than just um one certain aspect. Like there's gotta be something more. Like why does the struggle of a vocalist recording music in a sound booth sound utterly amazing for some reason, but the turmoil that like actors and actresses go through for musicals, 9 out of 10 times they go, yeah, let's record it behind a booth and cut it live. In fact, it's very similar that most movies do that anyway. Um, like, why doesn't it work for film, but a live performance, like in on a Broadway show or a musician recording an album, is completely different. Do you think there's any kind of particular reason like why that is?
So the short answer is that the people who are performing at Broadway are trained. They they work their butts off, and that is a common misconception. And people say that to me all the time. They're like, "You're such a great singer. You have such a beautiful voice," and I really appreciate that. Don't get me wrong, but I worked my tuckus off to get my voice where it is. I used to, and I'm not kidding, I've never told anybody about this, so Here you go, world. I used to hop on my bike, put in my headphones, play whatever music it was I wanted to sing, and I would bike and sing at the same time to build up my lung capacity. When I was in college, I worked for 3.5 years with a single voice instructor. Shout out to Mrs. Austin, who is a dream. And she taught me how to use my instrument. People do not wake up and they do not just learn how to sing. They do not just they don't just wake up and they can hop on stage and do a massive tap number. Sutton Foster is an incredible example of that. She is a trained dancer, and when she did Anything Goes, there's like a really long, intense tap number that happens in the middle of one of the biggest songs of the show. So she starts singing, she taps, and then you see the way that they've staged that number. She gets about 30 seconds, I want to say, where she stops dancing, she walks back, and you can see her chest, not her shoulders, but her chest, open, close, open, close, dig, big breath, belts out the last two notes. And that's because she was trained to do what she does. The people in these movies, 90% of the time, are not given the tools to succeed. Eddie Redmayne and Amanda Seyfried and Samantha Barks worked very, very hard with one person to do what they did for that movie. For example, in Beauty and the Beast, you hear Luke Evans and you hear Josh Gad singing in Gaston and in their songs, and you can feel every single note. They did that all in a studio. And yet everybody looks at Emma Watson and they go, she was horrible. And that was because they overproduced her voice and they sucked all the emotion out of it. So either she couldn't sing and they had to, or they tried to auto-tune her into sounding like Paige O'Hara, who originally voiced Belle, to make her sound the way that they thought that she should sound, and in the process completely sapped her of all the emotion in her voice. It's really important to know that just like how we're upset about like Chris Pratt being Mario because that makes no sense, but he's a big name actor, like he's not a voice actor.
Conversation for later, by the way.
Yeah, that's throwing that in there, but he's not a voice actor. At the end of the day, like Russell Crowe, he's not a Broadway performer. Rebel Wilson only ever did Pitch Perfect, which was all like pretend live performances. That's not like actual song and dance in the context of like a moment in a musical. Um, and when you don't know how to do these things, you're kind of playing at it a little bit. You actually see that in Phantom of the Opera. The woman who played Christine, I don't want to say her name because I can't remember it and I don't want to mess it up. The woman who played Christine in that movie was a trained soprano, and you can tell. You can tell. That's why that movie works, quite frankly. Gerard Butler, he's not a trained singer. He's not a trained Broadway musical actor, and you can tell his voice is not great. And it's a little bit weird because he's never done it before. That's not to say that there aren't actors who can, but let's look at Into the Woods. There are moments that shine in that. There really are. There are moments that shine in Into the Woods. And there are a lot of moments that are really weird because you can kind of tell that they did not know what to do with this weird Sondheim like movie. They're trying to make these musicals into something that they're not. It's dark. It, it's a show about how the world doesn't stop turning after Happily Ever After. It keeps going, and sometimes what you wish for is not what you need. Just because you want it doesn't mean that you need it, and that sometimes your wishes come with consequences. And you have these actors just making very bizarre choices. You have them making very bizarre choices in Les Mis. Les Mis is an amazing show, but if I were trying to get somebody to watch Les Mis, I would tell them to go watch the 25th anniversary concert because those are all trained singers and actors every single time. I'm hitting things now.
Uh,
And you know, we just had In the Heights come out. In the Heights was beautiful. I loved In the Heights, and that was because they were not trying to do what Tom Hooper did with I almost said Into the Woods, with Les Miserables and with Cats. They knew they were making a movie musical. I believe that there was most likely not any live singing. If it was live singing, it was like a sitting moment where you can sit, prep your body, and just deliver. But in those giant dance numbers, there's no way. That was all recorded in a studio. But the emotion isn't sapped out of their voices. It wasn't so overproduced that it felt cheesy and overwrought. It was it it's a very it's such a delicate balance, and so often they get it wrong, and that's what makes me sad. I think
Well,
that's it.
well, I would like to say, Kayla,
Yes.
I think it's time for you to give the definitive NERD stamp of this is the introduction list, maybe like your top three musical, film, or TV um, things for somebody to check out or re experience and to look at to really give a chance to really understand this genre. Now, obviously, this is probably going to be different than like the best films of all time, but like, what do you think are the best introduction? Watch these before you branch out. Let's give the definitive stamp Kayla approved.
Okay. So, if you want to take a look back and go a little bit back in history and kind of see where the genre started, I would absolutely say go watch Singin' in the Rain with Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds. It is beautiful, and so it's my sick day favorite. It's a really beautifully done classic era Hollywood musical.
Mhm.
If we're talking more modern, I would say watch the live recording of Hamilton. There are some problems with it because they're not in front of a live audience for all of it, but that gives you a really good sense of what a live performance feels like and kind of how that should be delivered. It also has a lot of modern music and it's pop, but it's not overly poppy. It's got rap in it. I'm not a big rap fan, but I love it, and the storytelling is absolutely incredible. Lin Manuel Miranda, Philippa Sue, um again, the actor's name is slipping from my mind. Christopher Jackson plays George Washington, and the guy who plays Aaron Burr, his name is slipping from my mind. But it's a really incredible feat. I would also say that if you're looking for something a little bit darker, go watch Sweeney Todd. Johnny Depp is a really great actor. I know we already had our Johnny Depp episode, but he really is. He really does an incredible job. Him and Helena Bonham Carter are not the best singers in the world, but they do a great job of kind of showing you how a not great singer can still do a really great job in a movie musical. And like I said earlier, it's much darker, it's much more gritty, so it might feel a little bit more naturally real than that normal suspension of disbelief.
Mhm.
If you're a fan of the Disney genre movie musical, go watch Enchanted. I loved Enchanted growing up. And quite frankly, Anastasia is great. That's another animated movie musical. Um, and if anything, I would say stay away at all costs. Avoid, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Do not watch the newest version of Les Mis. Don't do it. If you want to, go watch the 25th anniversary. Do not watch Jersey Boys. It is a fantastic stage show that, as much as I love Clint Eastwood, he ruined it. He did not know what he was doing. If you really want something like that, just go watch just go watch Hairspray. Like go watch, those movies. They're fun. They make you feel warm inside. That's kind of the feeling that you're supposed to get. There's also a version of Jesus Christ Superstar that is a live recording. There's an arena version, and there's also the original version from I think it was the 70s. That's really good too.
There you go, everybody. If you are a musical fan, let us know what you think. Tell us what you think the best introduction to these films are. Tell us why you think a lot of people are put off by them. And of course, we're going to come back to this conversation. This isn't going to be the only. It's not like this genre's gone forever. There's more. Oh, you just remembered something.
West Side Story. Who am I?
Well, we
Ah,
can't remember all of
ah,
them.
you have to watch West Side okay, West Side Story also, I'm so sorry, that was actually Sondheim's first show. He worked with, Leonard Bernstein on that, um, to write the music. It is incredible. It's a really, really great retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and, oh god, that movie's just beautiful, and I will be going to watch it when it comes out in December, Dominic, and I will be giving my complete and total review, even if I have to be mean about it.
That's perfectly fine. And don't also forget that we have the new Spider-Man movie in December. So that's gonna be a fun month. Can't wait
I'm
for
so
it.
scared.
Hopefully it's gonna be better than what we
I'm
may think of
scared.
Eternals. Anyway, we need to move on. Well, we don't technically have to, but I do want to move on because I forgot that we haven't, well, at least you haven't really given your opinion. Out on the sister podcast with N.E.R.D Gaming, Al and I did talk about our impression of Nintendo's announcement of the casting of Super Mario Brothers, which just kind of a quick summary on our end. Al and I are actually very positive about it. We think this is amazing and awesome. I actually absolutely love the cast. Chris Pratt is definitely the vocal point here. That he's kind of the more questionable one. Now, he actually, doing some background, things that I forgot about it, he has done voice work as the main character in the Lego movie and in Onward. So he's not exactly new to voice acting, but neither one of those characters really scream Mario to me. And that's kind of the big questionable role, is that he's kind of a Chris Pratt is his own personality, and it seems very different than Mario, who, to be honest, I don't really know what kind of personality Mario really has in the first place. He basically says, "Let's go, oof, and Mamma Mia." It's definitely the Italian stereotype. There's a lot of room for an improvement, so I'm definitely interested to seeing
Oh,
what Chris Pratt has. But Kayla, what is your impression of the Mario cast? Maybe not just Chris Pratt, but the entire thing. How do you like it?
I was really surprised by a lot of it,
It's
but
amazing, right?
well, I don't think we talked about this a little bit, but like I would not have personally pulled any one of those actors out from the pool and said, Keegan Michael Key should play Toad, Jack Black should be Bowser, Charlie Day should be Luigi. But pretty much everybody, I was like, oh, like yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like okay, yeah. And the biggest thing that me and Paul have been kind of laughing about is that he pointed out the fact that we have the Taduki character and like Charlie Day and It's Always Sunny has this like raccoon thing where he starts screaming about animals or raccoons or whatever. And I was like, now I just really need to see an animated Luigi turn into Tanuki Luigi and have Charlie Day screaming about being an animal as Luigi. Like, I think that would be really funny. If that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I I have a lot of hope for Chris Pratt because they picked a really weird picture for him too. Like I don't know why they picked like his like Jurassic Park version of himself when they could have picked,
His black and white
Andy.
stoic.
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
feel like
dramatic actor. I'm
that's not
playing.
the right headshot for this.
Yeah,
Like
not at all.
what happened to Andy? What happened to Andy from Parks and Rec? Like I want to see like a photo of that would have I think helped more people make the connection because I think a lot of people forget that he is a really, really talented comedic actor.
Yeah, and honestly, like I know a lot of people are immediately poo-pooing on him. I've seen a lot of positive. I've seen like pretty much two sides of the spectrum when it comes to the other castings. Like either everyone saw it and went, "This is amazing," and of course you have your people who are like, "This movie's gonna be awful." But
Mhm.
like the Chris Pratt one, I gotta be honest. The fact that Shigeru Miyamoto, who is the creator of um Mario and Donkey Kong and Zelda and so many of the important Nintendo franchises, the fact that he's
Mhm.
involved and he, I'm sure, gave his personal opinion on the casting. Now, Miyamoto isn't amazing with decisions. For as many amazing games as he's had, he's made a few that are a little I gotta say, like, I think whatever they're working with Chris Pratt, there's gotta be um a reason they went with it. I'm sure they sat down and they kind of sat down, worked with him to see how they envision Mario, and there's got to be something for it. My only real big worry about this movie, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you yet, Kayla, is that I do not want, and please, Nintendo, Illumination, please do not make this Jumanji featuring Mario. Please do not put these actors as like playing themselves and they get sucked into Mario. Please just make this a Mario movie. I do not. I've seen a lot of rumors that this is actually just Jumanji Mario, and I do not want that. That is the worst idea. We already have two Jumanji movies. We don't need another one. And I'm not saying they're bad, but we have Jumanji at home. Let's make another. Let's actually make a real good Mario movie and really distance ourselves from that thing they did in the 80s. Like I want an actual animated Mario movie. That's really my only hope. It'll completely ruin it for me if this ends up being Jumanji.
Because so Robin Williams did Jumanji first, and obviously that
Yeah.
movie is a bar none classic, incredible. And then we got, the two new Jumanjis, which I love. They are so much fun. I never said that they're good cinema, but they are so much fun and they're
Yeah.
really, really fun. But they work because we had the Robin Williams movie to like springboard off of. You know?
And like
Like that's why they worked. And it's not that it's not that it would be bad if they got sucked into like an N64 console, but like
disappointing.
it's
Like,
weird, I guess, because like Mario's just a I mean, and when I say it's just a side scroller, I'm not I want to be very
well,
clear.
you got
I'm
the
not
3D ones. There's multiple Mario series.
Yeah, I just like I mean it when I mean like it's a side scroller platformer, it doesn't really have most of the games don't really have a lot of plot to them. Like you have Galaxy, you have Mario Sunshine, but a lot of times it's kind of the plot's very secondary to what you're doing. You're mostly just trying to explore these worlds and have fun exploring the worlds. So my biggest yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't really know what plot I want from the movie,
Yeah.
but I don't want them to just get sucked into a Mario side scroller platformer or whatever, because that would be weird.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how you would have like all of these adult people like 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 if you have like Charlie Day and Chris Pratt, like why would they be in a room together ever and then get sucked into a game? Like that just doesn't
yeah.
no,
And
that doesn't work for me.
that's my biggest fear is that that's what they resort to. So I'm really hoping that they do the route that we all want them to take. These are characters that are beloved. Yes, Mario's personality doesn't go beyond Mamma Mia and Let's It Go, and Luigi is actually a more fleshed out character. With Luigi's Mansion, he's a kind of a anxiety ridden little ball. Um, and then like I kind of agree with you. Like the majority of these games, like Mario Sunshine might actually be the most developed plot because it's Mario going on vacation. He gets framed for making a land dirty, and then he has to clean up the land and then reignite Bowser Jr. with his father, who has to admit that Peach isn't his real mother, and they have this weird. It's funny that this is a Mario game, and that's like the story. It actually has like a weird thing to it, But and that's kind of the route. Like, if I was to really take it, like, part of me is like, we don't technically like. I don't know how you're gonna do it. Just whatever you do, as long as they don't do, hey, Chris Pratt's gonna get sucked into a Mario game. I'm perfectly okay with that. I just want this movie to start in the Mushroom Kingdom and end in the Mushroom Kingdom. That's all I ask. All right. Just again, we have Jumanji at home. They're great movies. I don't need another one. Like that's
We
all.
have 3. We already have a trilogy.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's gonna be a fourth one. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there will be Jumanji Level 3. I'm sure there will be, but
I don't know where they would go with it.
I I don't know. And I'm sure
I
someone's
mean,
like Mario, but no, we don't need that. Jack Black's been
well,
sucked into two Jumanjis already. We don't need a third one. Whatever. Oh my god. That being said, I'm perfectly okay with them putting like Kevin Hart into the movie somehow, some way. you know, They're-
I my my favorite is I keep shouting out YouTubers today, but today I'm gonna shout out Video Game Donkey now. He did a short video on like other characters that were gonna be playing in the movie, and um he had Kevin Hart playing something. I don't remember what it was. There was like he brought in like Morgan Freeman, and
yeah.
it's a great video. I highly recommend checking it out because there was some stuff in there I was like, "Ooh, they should cast that person."
Yeah, and there's still room for characters. Like there's no Bowser Jr. if
You
they're
don't have
going.
Diddy Kong.
Yeah,
Donkey, you want a
yeah.
Diddy.
They have Donkey and they have Donkey Kong. I shouldn't just call him Donkey. This isn't Shrek. But they have Donkey Kong. They have Cranky Kong, but they don't
Like, why
have
do we
Diddy Kong.
Diddy?
Huh?
Why do we why do we even have Cranky Kong? That's okay, that's actually I let me back up a little bit. First of all, I'm confused by Anya Taylor-Joy. I don't know why we need her as Princess Peach, but that's fine,
Because
whatever.
we need a drunk Princess Peach. That's
And then,
just that's a reference
and
to
then we
Queen's
have
Gambit, by the way.
and then we have Fred Armisen playing Cranky Kong. And it's not that I don't like Fred Armisen, but I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's amazing. By the
why?
way,
I'm like, why? Why do we have Cranky Kong and not Diddy Kong? And why are they announcing Cranky Kong before Diddy Kong?
well,
Like,
Laurel
why? I just
lore-wise, it makes sense because Cranky Kong is the first Donkey Kong who kidnapped Princess Peach and made Mario climb up all those towers. Lore-wise, Donkey Kong is actually the second one. Um, Sometimes considered the third one. It gets weird, but there is actually Donkey Kong lore. But I agree with you. Where's Diddy? Like, it's kind of weird to have Donkey and Cranky and not have Diddy. You're laughing at this. You're like, there's Donkey Kong lore, and yes, there is. They actually explain the timeline of Donkey Kong. Um, but yeah, that might be the reason why there's Cranky. I don't know why it isn't Diddy. We don't have Wario. We don't have Waluigi. You're laughing a lot at this. I'm just gonna keep this train going. Who's gonna play Goomba?
why have there been more than one Donkey Kong that have captured Princess Peach?
Well, the
Why would
second,
it
the
not
second,
all just be Donkey?
the second Donkey Kong never did because the first Donkey Kong was like, I'm gonna Princess Peach. I'm gonna capture. Technically, it wasn't Peach, by the way. I think it was Daisy. I think it actually kidnapped Princess Daisy. It gets weird. Also, Daisy isn't in this movie yet.
Yeah. So
But Daisy's
I
kind of
just
a side character anyway. She's not really one of
well,
the big
and
ones.
she's not coming. So we still have like another year until the movie comes out.
Over a year. Uh,
Yeah. So I'm sure there will be more casting announced. I'm sure we'll start getting more plot details. I kind of like how I'm blindly trusting Marvel right now with the Spider-Man movie. I am also choosing to blindly trust the creator of Mario that he can keep a
please me.
control of this potentially what could be a nightmare of an animated
I know.
movie.
Please,
I think it
Miyamoto.
definitely I don't remember when the first Super Mario came out. I've never seen it, which I am considering a blessing. And
The movie you're referring to, right?
the Super Mario movie, not the
Yeah.
game.
Sometime in the 80s.
Yeah. So I do think that that Mario lends itself better to an animated movie very clearly for a number of reasons. But I just I'm blindly trusting that they're going to be able to do something interesting with this because yeah, I have a lot of movies that I'm kind of concerned that the two movies I'm concerned about are the Mario movie and the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, especially and spoilers, spoiler. Especially at the
Uh,
end of Venom 2.
I don't want to talk about Venom too.
I know you don't want to. I went to go see it last night, and I understand that I am in the minority who had a good time doing it. I don't know if it's like every movie I've gotten to see in theaters, I've just had such a good time, and I don't know if it's just because I really miss seeing movies in theaters or what, but I had a good time watching it. And at the end, again, spoiler, bright red letters. um, they make an allusion again to that multiverse where he's with Venom like in a rundown motel on a beach somewhere in the South probably in Mexico, I think. And then everything goes wonky. And the next thing you know, they're in like this really nice hotel room. And Tom Holland's Spider-Man is on the screen, and it's a live segment from the Daily Bugle calling him a murderer, which is a direct lead into No Way Home. So you get this very clear convergence of the multiverse happening. And I really enjoy Venom and Eddie Brock. I enjoy Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, and I like the relationship that him and Venom have together. But for a lot of reasons, I'm very concerned about Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm so concerned about that movie, and I need it to be good. I need it to not be a train wreck because they are doing so good, and Tom Holland is a gem.
Leave it to Tom Hardy to ruin the MCU.
I swear to God, if this is Tom Hardy's fault, I may never watch another Tom Hardy movie again. If Tom Hardy ruins the MCU after everything that Tom Hiddleston did to make Loki gorgeous and create the multiverse for us, I will be so mad.
And with that, this has been the N.E.R.D Film and TV podcast for this week. Hope hopefully if you guys don't really watch musicals, you have listened to Kayla and her wisdom, and you will check out some of these musicals. Hopefully, you will have high praise and excitement for the new Mario movie, and hopefully Tom Hardy won't ruin another franchise. But with that being said, this has been the N.E.R.D Film and TV podcast. If you like what we do, please support us by subscribing to us, following us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, Spotify, Apple, all of that jazz. Leave a comment. Tell us what else you want us to talk about, all that stuff. But with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and nerd out.
Nerd out.